Back in 1945, there were competing flags. There were battles toe to toe. It was a little easier because you could see who it was that you had to fight. Today, that clash is not between flags and people sometimes as it is about ideas, which makes it tougher for you. Which takes me back to the education piece, why it's so important here that you gain perspectives on the nature of issues behind that lead to things like that, and the differences within culture and what they believe, and where liberties are, and the freedoms that I talked about in earlier pictures. Your challenge. But this is the first one. Raise your hand if you've seen this before. I'm just interested to know. Okay, not too many. This is the freedom of speech. Now, if you look at that guy and look at his hand, if you look closely at it, this is kind of a town report. Okay, and this guy, is this a politician? No. Why would you say no? Probably a guy that's been working in the factory, right? You know, how do you see that? I mean, you look at him, he's got, look at his hands, you look at his jacket. But he's here today on this night to present his opinion in the local community on an issue, which is the freedom of speech and the ability to do that. And I think we've got a responsibility today to have an opinion on those kinds of things and have an opportunity to lay out our point of view on those things as one of our fundamental freedoms. And FDR knew this, and that's why it's the first freedom. Because during that period of time, tyranny, during World War II, that didn't exist in very many places. I would submit to you that it doesn't exist in a lot of places today. The freedom of speech. This next one is the freedom from what? Now, the previous one is in the Constitution, but that's not. So where did he get this from? What was he saying about that freedom from what? You know, if you go back to just prior to World War II, in the early 1930s, we had experienced the Great Depression. The Great Depression, I mean, and when it hit us hard. And there were programs. And the country was, you know, in trouble, and we were trying to come out of this. But what FDR was trying to say is that we probably have enough. And if you really look closely at this picture, that when you get a chance to do it, that dress she's wearing, that coat he's wearing are threadbare. And I think what he's really trying to tell us here is that we have enough. But what we have that is so important to us, really, in that picture, are our families. That's what I think he's trying to say. But you know, around the world, that's not the case in terms of having enough. And talked about some of the humanitarian things that I have had the opportunity, and I say opportunity, to be able to do in particular places to relieve suffering. And that's the USS Mercy, with a hospital ship sitting off the coast of Indonesia after the tsunami that treated over 5,000 children who had been hurt in that. And this is the earthquake in Haiti, where there was no food or water for the people. So that freedom from what is responsibility, and FDR said it wasn't just for our own people at home, it was when we can and where we can was to help others. And my Marine Corps career has been focused about 50% of these kinds of things. Next one is tied up with the Constitution also, which is the freedom of worship. Interesting picture if you look at this, and what's said at the top, each according to their own beliefs, is the essence of it. But it's about color, it's about different religions. It's about freedom to worship the way you want, where you want, when you want, and to believe in what you want. And again, not enjoyed by a lot of people around the world in a lot of places. This was, at the time of the four freedoms, probably the most famous. And what you have there is, you have a man and woman tucking their kids in. If you were able to read what this says, it's a headline. And remember, it was only print media or the radio during that period of time. It's the print media every day, and what was said in the newspaper every day, people hung on those words. And if you want to find out about the war, people went to the movies on Saturday for a nickel, and there was a little bit of a flick before the movie started to talk about what was going on in the war. That's how the American people understood it. But this picture was on display around the United States during World War II, and it brought in $130 million in war bonds to support the war. Remember, after the Depression, didn't have a lot of money. Had to build those tanks somehow. But anyways, this is the freedom from fear. And I would tell you that in my 36 years, that picture right there crystallizes why I stayed. Why I stayed. Because allowing you to be here, allowing children to do what they need to do and where they need to go is the essence of why you have a military and why we defend our country. It underpins that flag sitting right there. And I want you also to know that on any particular day, there are men and women who are willing to go to dark places at the drop of a hat to protect this and to protect children. At the drop of a hat. And there always will be in this country, as long as we embrace these 4 freedoms. So, this picture has kind of 2 meanings. George Orwell said that people do sleep peacefully, but it's not about the violence piece. The essence of it is what that Marine, what that special operator was doing to help those children. Sometimes it results in this. So, in closing, if I had the opportunity, I guess, to tell Coach Paterno one thing today as to why I came and why I stayed, it probably would be tied up here in this quote by President Reagan. Some people spend their entire lifetime wondering if they made a difference in the world, but the Marines don't have that problem. And based on some of the things I showed you today, they don't. And I would submit that this is, in a broader context, applies to all those who serve. Just not in the service, but all those who work in the State Department, who are giving to our country in a whole host of venues in support of the nation. So, I talked about them, and you kind of know who they are in my context in World War II, but there's another set of veterans now that are out there. And when you graduate from here and go to school, you're going to see them. They're going to be there. And I think one of the differences is going to be is that when I talk about World War II in Vietnam, that was a result of draft. But this was a volunteer force. And those that served in the last 10 years volunteered to do it. Volunteered to go to places that were very dangerous and very hard in the interest of the flag and the interest of the freedoms. So, 36 years, Norman Rockwell paints it for me, helps me to describe it. And as I said, I just wish I had a chance to give this brief to Coach Paterno and to show him exactly why I did it. But I appreciate your attention today, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And we're going to have an opportunity in a couple minutes here to answer any questions. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Yeah, I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Okay? What's on your mind? Any topic. Any topic. Yes, ma'am. Where did I serve when I was in the Marine Corps? That's an easy way to answer that is where didn't I serve? I started out in the Pacific, in Southeast Asia, and I spent 3 or 4 years there, right at the end of Vietnam, conducting counterinsurgency jungle operations as a young lieutenant. And as a captain, I did some of the same things. That's when Mr. Ellis and I were together, and we worked predominantly in Japan and Korea. And then I moved to the other side of the world, and I got into the Mediterranean. And I ended up in operations in Kosovo when we went in there to settle down the ethnic violence that was there, and then Iraq, Afghanistan, operations in Yemen, operations in Pakistan, operations in the Philippines, and a number of Southeast Asia countries, and significantly, I had the opportunity to conduct operations, counter-terrorist operations against terrorism in Africa. But I also had the opportunity to do humanitarian operations in Africa. And I had the opportunity to go into places where leprosy. I actually found cases of leprosy in places deep, in places where no one could ever go. And bring hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical attention to those people to improve their quality of life. And in places where rarely had they ever seen anybody outside of their own people. So, and I could give you about 10 occasions when that happened. Significantly, I managed the tsunami in 2004, which occurred on Christmas night, and resulted in over 200,000 dead in minutes. And I was responsible for the 26 countries in the interagency effort that we pushed into the region, into Indonesia, and coordinated that effort along with the medical pieces of this and U.S. support, predominantly because we were using the fastest to the situation to start to relieve the suffering. You didn't ask me this, but I will tell you that that particular piece was the most rewarding thing that I have ever been associated with. See the power of the United States when it can bring to solve somebody else's unsolvable problem. Okay, one more question. Yes? Okay, the question was, her grandfather was a Marine in World War II, and so what was the hardest thing that I had to train to? Last year, I had 18 Marines that killed that worked for me. I went to 18 funerals. That's hard. Because, you know, in the Marines, you're a Marine your whole life. Your family's a Marine. So that's hard. You know, the physical stuff is not, you know, it's hard, but it's not that hard. And it actually is over with. So I would say probably flying in helicopters at night also on 0 nights, going into a very dark place against people who don't want you to be there is a little bit scary. There's a difference between that and, you know, some other things. But I think the hardest thing is probably the loss of loved ones, but that's offset by the great joy you see from helping people. That's your question. Okay, I think we probably got to get back to school here. Turn it over to Mr. Ellison.
Well, I'd just like to thank General Lefebvre for coming down today to speak to us and share with us his values and his experiences and his love of the country. And you know, I don't know what we can do. There's no such thing as an honorary doctorate from St. John's Country Day School, but I thought at the very least we could make him an honorary Spartan. So on behalf of all of us at St. John's, I want to present you. Questions, but otherwise we're dismissed and we can start with the seniors.